The woman had her hand on Zoe's backpack. That was the first thing the crossing guard noticed. Not the woman's face, not the car idling at the curb, but the hand. Fingers curled around the strap like she owned it. Like the 9-year-old attached to it was simply an inconvenience between her and wherever she was going. Hey, the crossing guard stepped forward. Hey, stop. The woman turned. She was dressed well. Too well for a Tuesday afternoon pickup. Tailored coat, heels on concrete, dark hair pulled back with the kind of precision that took time and money. She smiled at the crossing guard the way people smile when they've already decided they won't be questioned. I'm family, she said simply. Zoe said nothing. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, the way children go still when something in their body knows before their mind does. The crossing guard radioed inside. 40 seconds later, a teacher was at the door. 60 seconds after that, the woman was gone, heels clicking fast against the pavement, the idling car already pulling away before anyone thought to get the plate. Zoe stood at the gate alone, backpack still on, and started to cry without making a sound. By the time Claire arrived, there were 2 police cruisers outside Harlow Elementary, and a small crowd of parents clustered at the fence like they'd been planted there. She saw the cars first, then her heart dropped straight through the pavement. She ran. An officer met her at the gate with his hand out and his voice measured, the practiced calm of someone trained to manage the unmanageable. He told her Zoe was safe. He said it twice, the second time slower, as if the word safe needed to be pressed into her like a seal. Claire pushed past him anyway. Zoe was sitting in the principal's office on a chair that was too big for her, holding a paper cup of water she hadn't drunk. When she saw her mother come through the door, she didn't move. She just looked up with those dark, serious eyes and said, "She said she knew you." Claire crouched in front of her. She held her daughter's face in both hands and looked at her. Really looked, the way you check for damage you can't see. "I'm here," Claire said. "I've got you." Outside, another officer was waiting with a clipboard and questions. Claire answered them in tight, precise sentences. No, she didn't recognize the description. No, Zoe had never mentioned anyone like that. No, there was no custody dispute, no ex-family members with access, no one who would have caused to. And then she stopped, because something at the edge of the parking lot caught her eye. A black car. Not police. Not school. A car that belonged to a different category of person entirely. The door opened, and Kai stepped out. Claire hadn't seen his face in 14 years. She'd thought about it. She wouldn't pretend otherwise, but thinking about a face and seeing it are 2 entirely different acts. At 19 he'd sat in the 3rd row of her ESL classroom and asked questions that were too precise for his age. He'd had a boy's uncertainty wrapped around a man's intelligence, and she'd kept careful, professional distance from both. He was 33 now. The uncertainty was gone. He crossed the parking lot without hurrying, spoke briefly to the officer at the gate. 2 sentences, quiet, and the officer nodded and stepped aside. Claire watched that exchange with a feeling she couldn't immediately name. "Claire," he said. "Just her name. Nothing attached to it." "You're in New Jersey," she said. "I heard what happened." He glanced toward the school doors, then back to her. "Zoe is inside. She's fine." The word came out sharper than she intended. "She's with the principal." Yes. "She's fine." He nodded. He didn't push. She searched his face for something to be angry at, and couldn't find it. That, somehow, made it worse. "How did you hear? How did you even know to?" "Can we talk somewhere?" he said. "Not here." They sat in a diner 2 blocks from the school called Ray's that had been there since before either of them was born. The booths were red vinyl, and the coffee came without being asked. Claire wrapped both hands around the mug and didn't drink it. Kai sat across from her with his coat still on, watching her the way he always had, with complete attention, no performance in it. She'd found it disarming when he was a student. It was considerably worse now. "A corporate acquisition brought me to the area," he said. "I've been in Harlow for a week. And you just happened to be close enough to hear about an incident at an elementary school." He held her gaze. "No. I was told." "By who?" He was quiet for a moment. Not evasive, she could tell the difference. He was choosing how much to carry into the room. "Someone who monitors situations that involve me." Claire set her mug down. "That's not an answer." "I know." He leaned forward slightly. "I'll give you the full answer, but I need you to hear the first part before the second part, because the second part is going to make you want to leave." The fluorescent light hummed above them. Outside, a truck rumbled past. Claire looked at the man across from her. This person who had once been a boy she'd watched grow careful and brilliant in the back of a classroom, and felt something she recognized but refused to call by name. "Talk," she said. He told her about his life in the years since she'd last seen him. The company he'd built. The acquisition that had become 3 acquisitions. The way his family's name had become both a door and a ceiling. He spoke without pride or complaint. The way you recite facts you've long since stopped being surprised by. Then he said, "I'm engaged." Or I was. Claire didn't move. "It's an arrangement. Political. My family and another family whose interests overlap in ways that are, it doesn't matter. The point is I was engaged, and that engagement is the reason someone had their hand on your daughter's backpack today." The diner noise faded. Claire heard her own breathing. "Say that again," she said quietly. The confrontation deepens. Kai reveals everything, and Claire's world begins to fracture. Drop a comment if you're already hooked, and let's get into it. Kai didn't look away. Her name is Sarah Jean. She's the woman I was engaged to. And she is the woman who approached Zoe today. Claire's first instinct was to stand up. Her body actually moved, weight shifting, hands pressing against the table, before her mind caught it and held it down. She made herself stay seated. Made herself breathe. "Your fiancé?" she said. "Walked up to my daughter." "Yes." "At her school?" "Yes." And put her hands on her. "Claire, answer the question, Kai." "Yes." His voice didn't waver. She did. The coffee mug was still warm under her fingers. She focused on that, the specific, physical fact of warmth against her palms, because if she let herself feel the full shape of what he'd just said, she would lose the thread of the conversation entirely, and that was something she could not afford right now. "Why?" she said. Not a question, a demand. Kai exhaled slowly. "Because she found out I was here. And she found out that you were here. And Sarah Jean does not respond to threats by waiting to see what happens. She responds by making sure the other person understands the terms. I'm not a threat." Claire's voice was flat. "I'm a woman who used to teach you past tense verbs. I haven't spoken to you in 14 years. I know that." "Does she?" He was quiet. "Kai." She leaned forward. "Does she know that?" He looked at her with something that sat just behind his eyes, something careful and long-held. What Sarah knows and what Sarah chooses to believe are 2 separate things. She is very intelligent. She is also very deliberate. She didn't come here because she thought you were a threat. She came here because she wanted you to feel like one. Claire sat back. She pressed her fingers against her temple and tried to arrange the pieces into something she could hold. Sarah Jean had stood in front of Zoe, had put her hand on Zoe's backpack and smiled at a crossing guard, and said, "I'm family," with the easy confidence of someone who had never once been told no by the world and didn't expect today to be different. "What does she want?" Claire asked. "She wants me to come back to Seoul and sign the documents and stop complicating things." "And are you?" "Going back." He looked at her steadily. "No." The word landed in the space between them, and neither of them moved around it. Claire looked away first. Out the window, a mother was walking past with a stroller, head down against the wind, entirely unaware that inside this diner 2 people were sitting across from each other with 14 years of unfinished silence between them and a crisis building at the edges. "I need to ask you something," Claire said, "and I need you to tell me the truth." "Yes." "Did you know she was going to do this?" He didn't hesitate. "No. If I had, I would have stopped it." "How?" "However I needed to." She studied him. He met it without flinching. She had spent 2 years married to a man who could not hold eye contact when he was telling the truth, only when he was lying. She had learned the difference in her bones. "Okay," she said finally. He let out a breath. "Okay. That doesn't mean I'm not furious. I know. She touched my daughter, Kai. She stood in front of a 9-year-old child and used her as a message. That is not something I'm going to process quickly or quietly, or," her voice caught, just slightly, the first fracture in the controlled surface. She pressed her lips together and reset. "I need to know everything. All of it. Because I cannot protect Zoe from something I don't understand." He nodded. And then he told her everything. Sarah Jean was the only daughter of a man who had spent 30 years building political infrastructure in ways that never quite made the newspapers. Her engagement to Kai had been arranged 2 years ago, not formally, not with contracts, but with the kind of understanding that exists between powerful families who have learned that a handshake in the right room is more binding than any document. The merger her father wanted required Kai's company's cooperation. The cooperation required trust. The trust, in their world, required family. Kai had agreed because he'd believed at the time that it was the right kind of compromise, that he could build something real inside an arranged structure, that Sarah was intelligent and capable, and that love, perhaps, was less important than alignment. Then he'd come to New Jersey for the acquisition and walked past a school and seen, on a community notice board outside, a name he had not let himself think about in years. Claire Whitfield, Adult Education Coordinator, Harlow Community Center. He'd stood on that pavement for a long time. "You looked me up," Claire said. "Yes." "Because you saw my name on a board." "Yes." She shook her head slowly. "Kai, I didn't contact you," he said. I needed to know you were all right. That things had gone well for you." He paused. "They hadn't." She laughed once, short and humorless. "No, they hadn't. I'm sorry about your marriage." "Don't be. Leaving was the best decision I ever made." She glanced toward the window. "Zoe is the best decision I ever made." The way she said it, simply, without performance, settled something in the room. He watched her, and she felt it, but didn't look back. "Sarah has people," he said. "She found out I'd been searching your name. That was enough for her. She doesn't need facts, she needs narratives. And the narrative she has built is that you are the reason I won't come home." "That's insane. I didn't even know you were in the state." "I know. We haven't spoken since." "Claire." His voice was quiet. "I know. It doesn't matter to her. What matters is that I looked for you. And that tells her everything she thinks she needs to know." Claire stared at him. Something cold moved through her chest. Not fear exactly, but the recognition of fear's shape. She had spent 2 years learning what it felt like to be in the path of someone who had decided you were the problem. She knew this geography. She had barely found her way out of it once. "She's going to come back," Claire said. "Yes." "She's not finished." "No," Kai said. "She's just started. And now you know exactly how deep this goes. If you didn't see that ending coming, hit like and subscribe." Claire's phone rang at 6:47 p.m. She was back at the school collecting Zoe's forgotten sweater from the front office when the number came up. Her neighbor, Dana, who watched Zoe on late work nights and never called without texting first. Claire answered on the second ring. "There are 2 men outside your apartment," Dana said. "They've been standing there for about 10 minutes. They're not in uniform, but they have that look, Claire. That official look." Claire's stomach dropped. "Is Zoe with you?" "She's right here eating cereal and watching cartoons. She's fine." "But Claire, one of them has paperwork." She thanked Dana, hung up, and stood very still in the school corridor for exactly 4 seconds. Then she called Kai. He picked up before the second ring. She told him what Dana had said. There was a brief silence on his end. Not panic. She was learning that he didn't do panic. And then he said, "Don't go home yet. I need 30 minutes. I told you before, I'm not hiding. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to give me 30 minutes before you walk into something unprepared." She wanted to argue. She was very good at arguing. But she thought about Zoe at Dana's eating cereal, and she thought about official-looking men with paperwork, and she said, 20 minutes. Then I'm going. 30. 25, and that's my final offer. She heard something that might have been the edge of a smile in his voice. 25, he said. She went back to the diner. She sat in the same booth, same cold coffee, watching her phone screen light up with notifications she had not yet opened. Someone had already posted. She didn't know who, a parent from the school pickup crowd, a neighbor, someone who had seen the police cruisers and decided that was enough information to share with the internet. The story was small still, a local murmur, but she could see its shape, and she knew how these things moved. She opened one comment. Then she closed her phone and put it face down on the table. The words had been ugly and immediate, and completely confident despite knowing nothing. That was always how it started. She thought about her mother, who had raised her to hold her head up in rooms that didn't want her there. She thought about her ex-husband, who had spent 3 years trying to make her believe she was less than she was, and how long it had taken her to stop hearing his voice when she looked in the mirror. She thought about Zoe's face in that principal's office, still, serious, not crying until she saw her mother come through the door, as if she'd been holding it in trust for someone safe enough to spend it on. Claire pressed her hands flat against the table and breathed. She was not going to fall apart in a diner on a Tuesday. Her phone lit up again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She almost let it go, then answered. "Ms. Whitfield." The voice was a woman's. Smooth, precise, carrying the faint architecture of an accent carefully managed. I think it's time we spoke directly. Don't you? Claire went very still. Sarah Jean, you're quicker than I expected. A pause, and in it something that wasn't quite admiration. Kai always did have good taste. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted. Simplicity. Order. Kai comes home. The arrangements proceed. And you go back to your 3 jobs and your daughter and your very full, very admirable, very small life. The words were pleasant. The intention inside them was not. No one has to be embarrassed. No one has to be investigated. Everything just returns to its correct position. You touch my daughter, Claire said. Her voice was quiet and completely level. You stood in front of a 9-year-old child and you used her to send a message. And now you're calling me to offer terms. I'm calling you to offer an exit, Sarah said. There's a difference. There isn't. Silence. You filed a report, Claire said. The pieces were assembling themselves as she spoke, cold and clear. That's what the men outside my apartment have. You filed something. I filed several things, Sarah said pleasantly. Harassment, interference, and she paused, and Claire could hear the deliberateness of it, the enjoyment of the delivery. A formal complaint regarding the conduct of a former teacher toward a minor student in her care. The diner noise became very distant. That is a lie, Claire said. It's a question, Sarah corrected. A question that will take a very long time to officially become a lie. And in that time, your employer will have questions. The school board will have questions. The parents of every student you've ever taught will have very loud, very public questions. And your daughter, another pause, will grow up with a mother whose name produces a certain kind of search result. Claire's hand tightened on the phone until her knuckles ached. All of that, Sarah continued, goes away the moment Kai is on a plane. Think about it practically, Ms. Whitfield. What exactly do you have to gain here? He was your student. Whatever you imagine exists between you is a memory you've decorated over 14 years of loneliness. He will go home eventually. They always do. The only question is what condition you're in when he leaves. Claire opened her mouth. Then she closed it. Because the cruelest thing about what Sarah had just said was not that it was entirely false. It was that it found the exact seam of doubt that had been sitting quietly in Claire's chest since the moment she'd watched Kai step out of that black car and felt something she still refused to name. She ended the call. She sat for a moment, completely motionless. Then she picked up her phone and called Kai. He answered instantly. Claire. She called me. Claire said. She told me what she filed. She told me all of it. Her voice was steady. She was surprised to find that it was steady. And I need you to hear me clearly right now. I'm listening. I am not a woman who gets managed. I am not a woman who takes an exit because someone elegant offers her one. And I am not, her voice dropped to something quieter and more dangerous, going to let someone use my daughter as leverage and walk away from it clean. She paused. So whatever you're planning, whatever those 30 minutes were for, it better be enough. Because I'm done waiting. Kai was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Look out the window, he said. She looked. He was standing on the pavement outside the diner. Phone to his ear, coat open against the cold, looking directly at her through the glass. Behind him, she could see a small cluster of people she didn't recognize, and one face she did. A journalist she'd seen on the local news. A camera. A microphone. I told you 25 minutes, he said. You told me 30. You said 25 was your final offer. Despite everything, the cold dread in her stomach, the notifications multiplying on her phone, the shape of the fight still ahead of them, Claire Whitfield almost smiled. Get in here, she said. We need to talk before you do anything. He was already walking toward the door. And that phone call just changed everything. Sarah showed her hand. Claire found her footing, and Kai is standing in the cold with a journalist and a plan. If this story has you gripped, like this video right now. Kai came through the diner door and slid into the booth across from her in one motion, phone already in his other hand, pulling up something she couldn't see. He looked at her face first though, before the screen, before the strategy, and whatever he found there made him set both things down. Are you all right? He asked. No, she said. But I will be. Talk to me. He turned the phone toward her. On the screen was a document, a legal filing, time-stamped 40 minutes ago. His lawyer's name was at the bottom. I had this prepared before I came to the school today, he said. I knew when I found out about Zoe that Sarah wouldn't stop at one move. She never does. This is a counter-filing. It documents the incident at the school with witness statements from the crossing guard and the teacher who came to the door. It documents Sarah's presence in New Jersey, which contradicts the alibi she gave her own lawyer this morning. He paused. She told her legal team she was in Manhattan all day. Claire looked up. She made a mistake. She made an assumption. She assumed I wouldn't move fast enough to matter. Something quiet and certain moved across his face. She has always underestimated how fast I move when something matters. Claire held his gaze for a moment and then looked back at the document. The journalist outside. Marcus Webb. He's been covering political family corruption stories for 6 years. I've given him tips before, nothing self-serving. He owes me a conversation, and I'm collecting it tonight. What are you going to say? The truth. That Sarah Jean approached a child outside a school. That the charges filed against you are fabricated and retaliatory. That I am formally ending the engagement and withdrawing my company's cooperation from the acquisition her father's interests depend on. He said it plainly, no drama in it. Without my cooperation, the deal collapses. Without the deal, her father's political leverage in 3 ongoing negotiations evaporates. Sarah knows this. She filed those charges believing I wouldn't go this far. Will you? Claire asked. That's your family's deal too. That's money. That's relationships your family spent years building. He didn't blink. Yes. Kai. Claire. His voice was gentle, but underneath it was something immovable. I have spent 2 years making the careful choice. The practical choice. The choice that caused the least friction for the most people. And I am sitting in a diner in New Jersey because a woman put her hands on a child to make a point about my obedience. He shook his head once. I'm done making the careful choice. The diner hummed around them. Someone laughed 2 booths over. The ordinary world continuing its ordinary business while everything shifted. There's something I need to say, Claire said. Okay. What Sarah said to me on the phone. She stopped, found the words, started again. She wasn't entirely wrong. About some of it. We haven't spoken in 14 years. Whatever this is, she gestured briefly at the space between them. It's complicated by history and by timing and by the fact that you were once my student, and that will follow both of us regardless of what we do next. I know that. I need you to know that I'm not standing here because of what might exist between us. I'm standing here because someone threatened my daughter, and I don't run from fights. Those are 2 separate things. I know that too. Do you? He looked at her with absolute steadiness. I came to New Jersey because I saw your name on a board and needed to know you were all right. I didn't come here with a plan or an expectation. I came because, he paused, and for the first time she saw something unguarded move through his expression. Because some things don't leave you, no matter how carefully you try to file them away. He let that sit. But I am not asking you for anything tonight. I am asking you to let me stand next to you while we deal with what's in front of us. That's all. Claire looked at him for a long moment. Outside the window, Marcus Webb was checking his watch, camera crew adjusting their equipment in the cold. Okay, she said quietly. Then let's go. They walked out together. Marcus Webb looked up when the diner door opened, and his eyes moved between them with the practiced assessment of a man who had learned to read situations faster than most people read sentences. He extended his hand to Claire first. Ms. Whitfield, he said. Thank you for coming out. I didn't have a lot of other options, she said, and shook it. Kai stood to her left, not in front, not behind. Beside. She noticed that. She thought he probably intended her to. The statement took 4 minutes. Kai spoke without notes, without performance, in the same quiet register he used for everything, and somehow that made it more devastating than raised voices would have been. He confirmed the engagement to Sarah Jean. He confirmed it was over, effective immediately. He named the incident at the school. He named the charges as fabricated and committed documentation to investigators within the hour. He did not editorialize. He did not emote. He simply laid out the facts in sequence and let them do what facts do when they are arranged correctly. When he finished, Marcus Webb asked one question. Mr. Yoon, can you confirm whether Ms. Whitfield is someone you have a personal relationship with, given the history you've described? Kai glanced at Claire. She gave him nothing. Kept her face neutral, let him answer for himself. Ms. Whitfield is someone I respect enormously, he said. What exists between us beyond that is personal and private and will develop, or not, on its own terms. What I can confirm is that she is not what she's been accused of being. And I will not stand quietly while someone I respect is destroyed by a lie built to control me. Marcus Webb wrote something down and nodded. That was enough. Dana brought Zoe to the diner 40 minutes later. She came through the door in her coat and her backpack, looked around the room, found her mother, and crossed to her without hesitation. Claire pulled her in and held her for a moment longer than usual. Zoe allowed it with the patient tolerance of a child who understands that sometimes adults need the hug more than they do. Then Zoe straightened up and looked across the booth at Kai with those frank, assessing eyes. "Are you the reason Mom's on the news?" she asked. "Partly," he said. She considered this seriously. "Are you going to fix it?" He looked at Claire when he answered. Claire was already looking back at him. "We are," he said. Zoe sat down, pulled her backpack onto her lap, and unzipped it for her homework with the calm practicality of someone who had decided that was a satisfactory answer. Claire watched her daughter for a moment. This small, serious, extraordinary person she had built her entire life around, and felt something loosen in her chest. Not resolution, not safety, but the specific relief of no longer carrying something alone. She looked back at Kai. He was watching her with that same complete attention, no performance in it, the same attention she'd found so disarming across a classroom years ago. It was considerably worse now, and she was considerably less inclined to keep her distance from it. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow the documentation goes to investigators. Tomorrow Marcus Webb's story runs. Tomorrow Sarah's father gets a phone call he won't enjoy." He paused. "Tomorrow is going to be loud. And after that," he held her gaze. "After that we figure out what after that looks like. Together, if you'll allow it." Claire looked at him for a long moment. Outside, the street had gone quiet. Inside, Zoe was writing something in her notebook with great concentration, occasionally mouthing the words as she went. "I'll allow it," Claire said. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise. It was something smaller and more honest than either of those things. The particular courage of two people who have seen enough of the world to know that choosing someone is always a risk, and choosing them anyway is the only answer that has ever mattered. Zoe looked up from her homework. "Can I get hot chocolate?" "Yes," Claire said. "Can he pay for it?" She pointed at Kai. Kai looked at Claire. Claire pressed her lips together against a smile. "Yes," Kai said gravely. "I can pay for the hot chocolate." Zoe nodded, satisfied, and went back to her notebook. Outside, the night settled over Harlow, New Jersey, ordinary and unhurried, indifferent to the fact that inside a vinyl booth diner with fluorescent lights and coffee that came without being asked, something had quietly, irrevocably begun. One story that started with a hand on a backpack and ended with hot chocolate, and a beginning neither of them planned. If this story kept you here until the last line, please subscribe, like this video, and drop a comment below telling me your favorite moment. Did Sarah's phone call get you? Was it Zoe at the end? Let me know. Your comments genuinely shape what stories come next, and I read every single one. More stories are coming. See you in the next one.